Welcome to season two of the Happy Sensory Corner podcast at Mendability. Now, everybody knows that what we want to do is to help everyone, but especially when they are feeling vulnerable, to feel happier, more comfortable in their own skin, more confident, proud of themselves, even. And so, our contribution to help with that is to work on brain health because we believe that as our brains grow stronger, more resilient, healthier, that all of us will benefit, especially those among us who struggle to sleep or overwhelmed by the barrage of information from the environment, or who are crippled with anxiety. So we developed a gentle, family-centered program of whole brain games that boosts brain development and activates the brain's self-healing mechanisms. It's based on the neuroscience field of environmental enrichment, and we call it sensory enrichment because of the emphasis on sensory and motor experiences. That's where there's the most clinical data. So while we're experts in boosting brain development, and our results are so consistent that we guarantee them, it's always exciting to learn about new, non-intrusive methods that work. And today, our guest will help us explore an approach that surprised me, I have to say, when I first heard about it. How speaking to your child while they're sleeping can actually bring calm, connection, and real change to their behaviors. So let me introduce Kerre Burley properly. Kerre Burley is the visionary founder of Creating Functional Families and International SleepTalk Training Academy. And now I think, Kerre, you've got over 40 years dedicated to this, empowering
It's,
families. That's right.
yes, sneaking up there, Kim. It definitely is.
I know. I'm. Um, I was going to say something funny about me being in this for only 20 years, but it sounded funny in my head, but it doesn't work anymore.
That's
But
normally
anyway,
they're normally best ones.
that's right. The best jokes are the ones that I laugh at myself. So,
Correct.
I mean, you're the mom of five beautiful, and you describe them as willful boys. So I'm gonna have to ask you about that at some point. But you discovered the sleep talk process. When was that?
I discovered it, Kim, when my last son was about 6 or 7 years old. So my first four boys were not lucky enough to actually have the talk process done to them, but certainly my last son was, and the difference was absolutely incredible. And it inspired me enough to meet the person that put it together, train, become a consultant and a foundation coach, and eventually the lovely lady retired and I bought the business because I'm so passionate about, I know firsthand what it can do. And you're right,
Mm.
it's just a simple process.
Did something happen to little Carrie that planted the seed for where you're at today that made you say, I'm going to be helping people? I know that because.
Well, when I think of little Kerry, I don't think, Kim, I was ever that little. I've always been a pretty big girl. But I do realise at the age of 12, believe it or not, I knew I had an affinity with children. And I was a child myself. But at the age of 12, I started teaching swimming to other children. And it was just, I guess you could say it was a path that led me to work with families. It led me to open up my own swim schools. I used to run aquatic centres, and it was being that busy businesswoman, very successful, that I realised that I was not really doing the right things by my boys. They were certainly they were willful. They were very boisterous. And I was very busy. And so I just felt as they grew older, I could see that they were having challenges. And even with years and years and years of experience, Kim, with working with families, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I could reach out to for help. And I had a child that had a speech challenge. I had one child on the I guess you could say, on the spectrum. I had another child that was very anxious and fearful. And as a mum who thought I had all the answers, I suddenly realised that no, there's something missing here. And without, as many women would know this, when you're trying to juggle all these hats, it can be quite distressing when you realise you're not really doing the right thing by your children. And it was only, as I said, on the last one, I discovered this amazing solution that I wish I would have had for my other boys, because I did see them struggle through puberty. I saw them struggle through becoming young adults, and I believed it all stemmed from those early imprint years, that they didn't get what they needed from their mum or their dad. And so I guess, yes, when we go back to, what has put me on this road, it was just like, I can understand the stresses out there of parents. I can understand their fears, their frustrations. And then when you see these parents who are doing the best they can with the resources they have, and they really cut themselves up about it, I like to think now I'm a bit older, I'm a bit more jovial, and I just want to say to them, look, relax, you're doing fine. Anyone on tonight that's listening, give yourself a pat on the back, because this is what it's all about. We're never going to stop being parents, but we also need to be growing and learning and doing the best we can as we go on this road. That was a long-winded answer, wasn't
it? It sounds like you've always had a helping streak, strain, trait, characteristic, personality. This is something in you that made you, and I wonder if it's ever going to stop.
No.
Because I'm thinking about my own mother, way past 70, and I won't say how many more years after that, because she wouldn't like me saying that. But, I've been using the word retirement and say, what happens after this? And it's like, what do you mean, what happens after this? Nothing's after this. And, yeah, she wants to, when she was a little girl, she had that experience, that sort of planted the seed in her that would made her, that just gave her direction in her career mission to find out how to help the brain be stronger, healthier, because she did not want the people that had those bad experiences in their childhood. She wanted to be able to prevent that from happening to other people. And it's the same passion, it's the same drive.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm thrilled to be talking with you, Kim, because even last night I was actually listening to a gentleman who's talking about how important it is that the brain and the body are working together, and how we can get ourselves into that mode. And of course, I've lived long enough to know and remember, it wasn't that long ago where most of our scientists just thought the brain was static. It was just, you got given so many brain cells, and that's all you've got for the course of your lifetime. And of course, we know, this is what's been fabulous for Sleep Talk, is the term neuroplasticity sort of come on board, 20, 30 years ago. It's now becoming mainstream. People are now realising just how important it is that, we can make significant changes in our life, provided we can keep improving our mental capacity right through till till well past the end. And that's what I think that when we look at Sleep Talk, that's really what we're playing on. We're playing on the neuroplasticity card, which we can change our behaviours, we can change our patterns, and we can continue to build this amazing creation that people don't realise just how much we can do ourselves to assist in bettering our life. But of course, I feel like I'm preaching to the converted. But it is nice to have actually seen what has happened over the last 30 years, and the neurodiversity that's out there, the information that keeps coming in. It's exciting. It's exciting because it basically means that we are all empowered now, and we can all do something about it. Particularly as parents, when we're looking at being the best parents we can be. by learning all the additional modalities and what's happening out there, it just gives you so much confidence to know you're on the right track. And that's how I feel. I don't think I'll ever stop doing this. Retirement is just not going to happen, Kim. Sorry. Too much
All right,
to
let's
do.
talk about sleep talk because I know I planted this seed of how I don't know how many other people on this call are familiar with sleep talk and this idea that you can speak to people while they're sleeping and having an influence on their mood later on. Please explain, how does all of this work? Explain, the clinical studies behind it. Just tell us everything.
Oh, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, the sleep talk process started, Kim, about 50 years ago, and it began with a gentleman called Jim Golding, who found he had a daughter that had a lot of challenges. Let's say she was on the spectrum, she had speech problems, she had anger issues. There was a lot going on, and he just found that as she was getting older, certainly none of the medical staff was stepping forward and giving them any diagnosis other than you must be a bad parent, which was unfortunate, but that's what happened back then. Anyway, the more he looked, his daughter was getting very angry with life, and he thought to himself that there must be something I can do to make her life easier. He certainly knew there was no magic cures, but he could just see his daughter was very angry, very aggressive. She was very non-compliant. And it was upsetting to him, to the point that he thought, well, while she's awake, there's nothing I can't get through. There's nothing I can say, nothing that I can do to make her feel comfortable or relaxed or even happy with her world. And he certainly thought at that time there was a lot of, I guess you could say there was a lot of stuff coming up about how the subconscious mind, even when we're sleeping, how the subconscious mind and the RAS is actually listening, how our hearing is still operational. And there was things, people were waking up after being in a coma and being able to recite, lots and lots of stuff. It was groundbreaking back then, Kim. But he thought to himself, well, if I could basically just say some really nice structured sentences to her, call them affirmations, but these were based on science, while she's asleep. I don't rouse her. I don't consciously let her know that I'm doing this. If I can just relay them, maybe it will make a difference. And I guess in the start, Kim, it was very, he was exploring, but over the course of a few weeks, a few months, he just noticed her behaviour changing, and he continued to be consistent with the statements. He continued to deliver them when she was asleep, and it did take maybe 2 to 3 years for several of these, let's say, major challenges to start dissipating, to start going away. The very first thing he found after a few weeks is she started to feel happier. She started to speak. Her speech improved, her social skills improved, and he really felt like she's just feeling happier. And then over the course of, as I said, that time, he tackled speaking issues. She was very much, she had selective mutism. She could say no very clearly, but then she wouldn't converse with anybody else. And after a few years, her nickname at her sheltered workshop became Chatterbox. She found that they found her speech improved, her fine motor skills improved, and all of these areas which were once just told that there's just no hope, improved. And it was not long after that others wanted to know what was going on. Others wanted to know, what are you doing? How is she getting so much better? Now, to this day, and I know I say this started 50 years ago, the lovely Michelle, who was the original guinea pig, she is still alive. She is still living in Victoria, in Queensland. She ended up getting married. She has a house. She has travelled. Yes, she still has, cerebral palsy. She has lots of challenges, but her life has been just so much more relaxed and uncomplicated because of sleep talk. Now, the gentleman, Mr. Golding, has definitely gone ahead and taught it all around the world. But Kim, it's one of the best kept secrets of parenting. This is why I really want people to understand it takes no more than a few minutes a night, and it is just structured sentences that go straight into a child's subconscious. They wake up in the morning and they have no knowledge of what you've said or you've done, but we do see behaviours start to improve. We see children start to feel, just more comfortable and happier, and they don't know why. We know why. It's because all of a sudden that subconscious mind is starting to release some of these negative beliefs, some of these negative actions or behaviours or manifestations that have literally just built up over the years. And it's not, people say it's hypnotherapy. It's not hypnotherapy. It is persuasive language, but it's very much to do with the subconscious mind. And that child once a child starts feeling they're unconditionally loved, and that's what the statements seem to do, it's interesting how all of a sudden there's a lot of stuff that falls away. And yes, you asked me to talk about it in a nutshell. And people say, what do I do? Well, now I show professionals how to teach parents how to empower their own children to overcome some and improve some of these challenges. So the scope is magnificent, but it can help with just children feeling happier to children on the spectrum who are having, really, really major anger or social problems. So it's a gift. I call it my gift. That's the gift I'm giving away to professionals and parents.
What are the most common misconceptions that maybe parents have when they hear about this for the first time? How do you reassure parents maybe who are like, what? You just basically talk to the kids?
Absolutely. The biggest, number one, and I think lots of people fall into this, when they hear the word sleep talk, Kim, a lot of parents think, but my daughter is sleeping okay. They immediately just flick it to, it must be for sleep challenges. Now, it does help with trauma and night terrors and sleeping patterns as well, but it's so much more than that. It really is, as I've already mentioned, it covers so much more than just sleeping. But that's the first thing that parents think. It's my child is okay with sleeping. They might be having eating disorders or toiletry issues or any.
I know. We've got the same problem with our program called sensory enrichment therapy. We picked it because you can almost taste what it is that you do. You kind of feel it is a very rich sensation and almost warm and fuzzy feeling with sensory enrichment. But really, when we were consulting with some of the scientists who were involved in the development of the program, they said that it should be called brain activation therapy because this is what it does. It's a brain program, and but brain activation feels so cold and so. But people say, oh, sensory enrichment. Oh, you must help with sensory processing issues then. Okay, I guess, but no, not really. So I guess the same parents when they hear sleep, it doesn't matter what happens after that. They're like, oh, sleep talk, that must be a sleep program.
Well, we've thought long and hard about doing it, and we're not going to change it. In fact, it was changed to something similar, and parents didn't know what it was, so we went back to sleep talk there for a while. But when you say, Kim, what else does parents basically challenge with? Sometimes they're challenged, particularly if, and I've had many dads, mums or dads that are, let's just say, academics, or they might be doctors or dentists. They'll get to the end of our consultation and go, is that it? It's that simple. And I went, yes, it's very simple. And instead of it being a bonus, sometimes we like to complicate things. And particularly, if we've got a university degree, we want, that's far too simple to work. And sometimes I have to let the proof be the pudding. And I'll give you an example. We had a mum who was a nurse and a dad that was a doctor. He wanted nothing to do with the program, but he did have a child who was having toiletry issues, and it was upsetting the whole family. And he came on board after, I think, about 6 weeks. The toiletry issue started to dissipate or start to disappear. And he just wanted the proof first. So the wife was doing the program for that first 6 weeks. And when he actually saw the proof from his own child, that's when they take a belief. But it does make me smile, because I think it's just our human condition. We want to complicate things. When we're teaching parents how to deliver this program, we are giving them a little bit of science. We are showing them a little bit about neuroplasticity. We talk about what happens when a child goes to sleep. We share with them the different sleep frequencies that the children go through. So we give them a little bit, but then it's all about encouraging them to be consistent and encouraging them to be committed to that 8 to 12 weeks. That's really the hardest part for a parent, is 3 minutes a day for 8 to 12 weeks. And the parents that grab the ball and run with it, and Kim, the results come. The parents sort of poke it with a stick and maybe do it once a week or twice a week. They just find the process takes a little longer. It still works, but it takes longer. So yeah, that would be the 3 areas that I think as consultants, that as a consultant, that's what I encourage parents to think about. Take the leap of faith, just know that it works, and then basically our evidence backs it up after those few weeks. And sometimes, Kim, we say 8 to 12 weeks, but sometimes we have changes in a week, which is quite spectacular. And I can give you an example. Just recently, I did a workshop with 20 hypnotherapists, and they were all learning the very first phase of the program. And I was quite surprised, because they were hypnotherapists. A lot of them were able to start that very night and start working with their own children. And in particular, I had at least 4 hypnotherapists get back to me within a week and said, especially one mum said for the first time ever, her child was now sleeping in his own bed after 6 days. And I'm thinking, wow, I haven't quite put my hand on, is that because they all have, they're very relaxed with their speech, they know how to speak slowly? Or is that just that, in 6 days, this child had been not sleeping for over 12 months. And in 6 days, it happens a lot, but I still say to parents 8 to 12 weeks. And if it happens earlier, then you're lucky. You're very fortunate. But it does happen with consistency, and it does happen when we have parents who are just committed to spend that 3 to 5 minutes a night with their children.
And some follow-up questions. I want to understand more deeply how this works. And I'm thinking, okay, there's the delivery component in terms of the voice, and you mentioned that the delivery, the sentence structure part of it, how do you structure the sentences so that the subconscious listens? How do you know that the kid is in the right phase of sleep to start speaking, and things to avoid? I'm not sure which one to go after first. Which one do you think in your training, maybe, which one is the other, things to avoid first, maybe, because you need to learn how to fall, in martial arts, you need to learn how to fall first before you learn anything. Or when you drive, the first thing you learn is how to brake, right? So how anybody who's like, I'm going to start talking to my kid in their sleep tonight, and like, okay, got no training. Is there like a mistake to avoid in this case?
There is one thing that Sleep Talk works really well at, is because we're not looking at the effect of something. We're looking at the cause. And the interesting part, the question that most parents come back to me will say, well, why are they doing this? Why is this behaviour happening? And often I say, it's not a question. It doesn't matter why it's happening. Let's actually get it at the cause. Let's actually put that fear to bed. And that's what Sleep Talk does. And the child's subconscious knows what's going on. So we don't need to know about the effect. And I had one mum who, it's quite interesting. One mum one of the things that we ask him is do not change our wording. And of course, if you're sometimes parents can be overzealous, and we say stay committed, but be consistent and don't change the wording. Keep the wording the way it is. It's the same words and sentences that have been around for 50 years. They work, so we don't change them. But I had one mum who said to me, and she was lovely, her biggest, and many parents will laugh at this, her biggest challenge with her daughter was that she kept dropping the towels after she'd have a shower on the bathroom floor. Now, of course, I did a little bit of work with this mum. That was her number one problem. That's all she wanted to do. So at the end of the day, she said to me, can we just put into another line? Can we add another line?
Now I got some more follow-up questions.
She said,
we need to talk about consistency between what you say at night and what you do during the day. Is this important?
Absolutely. And the interesting part, Kim, is I say sometimes I take my parents from red parents to green parents, which means that along the way, the parents get some education into, how important speech is. They get some education into looking beneath the surface. This particular mum is a perfect example. The mum's challenge was not so much that the towels were on the bottom of the bathroom floor. Her challenge was that her daughter was 11 and would not listen to her. It was a communication challenge. It was a communication problem from that mum. And I had to do a little bit of work.
Sounds like a power struggle.
Well, yes, communication to start with. The daughter wasn't doing what she wanted her to do, not just with the towels, but in life in general. So you are correct. The daughter was also being very exertive. She was becoming a tween, which means she's becoming, her own little individual. And so mum has to have a little bit more understanding of what was going on. But the interesting part is when I suggested to her, forget about the towels going on the floor. Let's just start with sleep talk. And during the day, let's not comment on everything your child does wrong. I think sometimes as parents, we can sometimes get our heads a little bit in the wrong area. And so I said, just try, if it's appropriate, saying something nice when your daughter does something nice. Now, she started doing that, and I guess 3 days later, the towels never hit the floor again. And I'm not saying, every family is different, every parent's different, every child's different. But at the end of the day, this mum did want to input things into the sleep talk. And we just say, no, just trust that the child's subconscious is listening, it understands, and it moves forward.
You talked about one of the things that you're trying to achieve with this program is to make the person feel like they're unconditionally loved. And that is so powerful. I'd like you to talk about this. And I think this is why I had this question about consistency between what you say at night and what you do during the day to support that feeling of unconditional love. And you talk about this mom who was worried for some reason that this child was not picking up, not listening. And I'm afraid when I hear things like that, because I'm thinking, okay, narcissism, and I'm thinking the parent needs to feel unconditionally loved, and maybe they never felt unconditionally loved by their own parents. So how are they going to learn what that feels like, and how are they going to learn to make their children know what it feels like? And if the objective of the program is to do that during sleep, surely there's a huge amount of work that's done during the day, it feels to me. So can you talk about that?
I can, Kim, and I love the question. You're spot on. I teach professionals all over the world the program on how to teach parents. And can I tell you, there is a section in our training where I get everybody to close their eyes. I do a little bit of hypnotherapy and I take them back to their childhood. And I literally get these professional people, and I'm talking about doctors and psychologists and hypnotherapists and lots of alternative therapists, and I get them to please raise your hand if you feel unconditionally loved. And can I tell you, it hasn't failed yet. The first time I started this, I was blown away. We will probably, if there's a room of 20, we might get 3 hands raised. interesting. There are so many, whether we've skipped a generation or people don't understand what unconditional love is, there's a lot of people out there who have never felt unconditionally loved. And I guess I can put myself into that situation. I remember my dad was a swimming coach, and I still remember that one day I walked over to him with a silver medal, and he just flicked me away and he said, "Go away, I don't want to talk to you. You come second." And I was maybe 6 or 7. And I think I made a decision back then that the only time my father would love me if I was winning, if I won the gold medal. Now, it's so lovely now to say, I don't hold, I've forgiven my dad for that. He had his own reasons, but it's so lovely to be at a point now where you realise if my dad was standing next to me and I said, "You never unconditionally loved me," I'm sure Dad would say, "Yes, I did. I loved you. I unconditionally loved you." And this is what most people have experienced as children. So as they're going through this amazing process, all of a sudden they're speaking these words which are really cementing into their children that they are unconditionally loved no matter what. Now, when you say the brilliant part of this program is, can you guess what happens to that parent, Kim?
It's because they say it night and night, and they must change their outlook and their...
Absolutely. And I'm not going to scare any parents here, but I do see the change in parents. I do see the change in energy. I see parents start to relax. In fact, I had one father say to me that he's going to do sleep talk until his children get married. He reckons, and he said, "It's not just for my kids." He said, "It's for me."
It's really... I think I've just fallen in love with your program. I can't think of anything more powerful than to get a parent to feel what it's like to love their child unconditionally, and for that child to feel unconditionally loved by the person who matters most in their life. Because I'm, speaking after so many parents, we fail parents out of our program. We don't recruit them in when we get a sense that there's a lack of that unconditional love. They'll talk about their kid as a problem to solve, not as a person to help to become happy. And you can totally tell the parents who want their kids to be happy versus the alternative. And it's always sad for me to say, "Sorry, I don't think this program is going to be able to help you." And now I feel like I've found... well, I know what I'm going to do now is to say, "There's this crazy lady in Australia you need to talk to." And I think I'm going to set the baseline over here, because then they'll hear the science and they'll hear, because if they haven't felt unconditionally loved, they don't know what it feels like. They don't know how to give it. And so I don't think it's going to resonate with them that this is one of the big ideas behind Sleep Talk. They might even be afraid by it. Have you ever had parents just say, "No, I'm not interested in doing this," and you can tell that was the issue?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. More often though, Kim, what we have is but say to me, "But I don't want anyone else to know." There is certainly that shame involved. And, when we actually can take, and I had, I'll say, a stockbroker in New York who had lots of challenges with his son. He was really starting to get into OCD tendencies. And the doctors had just said medication's the only way around this. And I think the child was about 9. Now, I'm not knocking doctors or medication, but after a few short weeks, all of a sudden, a lot of the behaviours just disappeared. And the dad was beside himself. He said, "I can't believe it. This child used to get lifted from the bed, carried to the bathroom, picked up from the bathroom, carried back to the bed to get dressed because he wouldn't walk on the ground. His father was beside himself because there was a camp coming up and he knew that he couldn't take the kid, was going to miss out. And after, as I said, a few short weeks, all that just disappeared. The child went to camp. He had a fabulous time. Back to being almost, what you'd classify, if there is such a thing, as a normal child. And I said to the dad, "Would you be willing to give us a little bit of a feedback or a testimonial or something to let other parents know?" And he's going, No, I don't want anybody to know that this has happened." So we have that sense of shame. And I think it's unfortunate in today's society that a lot of parents are worried about what other parents are thinking of them. And yes, we have parents when the children are misbehaving or the children are on the
Interesting
spectrum,
that
they
after
get very
weeks,
embarrassed.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No,
I'm
no,
feeling
that's
all
okay.
passionate and animated about this. But it feels to me like if you discover the power of love, okay, I'm going to say that. After weeks of discovering the impact of making somebody feel unconditionally loved, speaking to them in ways that make them feel unconditionally loved, being trained on being consistent during the day so that what they hear at night is also what they feel during the day. It feels like after weeks of that training, your own insecurities would go away, or maybe it exacerbates them. Maybe it makes them feel, I wish I was feeling that. And maybe that, because all those feelings of shame, all those bad decisions you make in your relationships, they're always based on fear, and it's always an anxiety thing, and it's always because you're not secure. And if you feel unconditionally loved, you're so much more secure. And so I'm surprised that I wonder why the parents are not feeling more secure themselves after weeks of helping their children feel secure. Do you know why?
Well, I find a lot of parents, especially with my creating family, functional families, a lot of my parents, as I said, go from green to go from red to green. They're every day gets a little better. I see them actually, speaking better. I see the energy at home a little bit better. I see them focusing on what they should be focusing on. Does it happen straight away? No, it's a journey. And often I'll say to parents, especially with the way that society is, everybody just feels that they have to be the best parent. I've got to be the best parent. And I'm going to quote a Justin Coleman here, which here in Australia is one of our experts. And he said, you don't have to be the best child, the best parent in the world. You just have to be the best parent in your child's world. And so this is again when we say, just relax, just enjoy the journey. It is a long journey, but don't be so hard on yourself. The other part of my training with him is to really tell parents to forget about what others are thinking, forget about even all the experts
But
telling
you
you this.
can't do that when you're feeling insecure. Forget what other people are thinking. You can't just say that. It doesn't just happen because you tell them to. They've got to go through that
Oh,
transformation themselves.
and I
Now, do you
do.
have like a feedback loop where maybe somebody is going to also sleep talk the parents?
Oh, I know, but you'd be amazed how many parents say to me, can you do it on my wife? Can you do it on my husband? I believe, particularly when somebody is starting to notice that things are changing, they're getting better. I do believe I have parents who all of a sudden say to me, oh, I thought it was Johnny's fault that he's like he is, but I'm starting to think that maybe I need some help. Maybe I
So
really,
they are
and
going through a transformation.
they
You
do.
said,
And
sorry, go ahead.
everybody is a little different, but it always makes me laugh because I have a sleep talk. I have a lot of sleep talk consultants and coaches who are also hypnotherapists. And so they'll say often that the parent will come and want them to work with their children, and they will suggest sleep talk and they will get them started on sleep talk. And then they say they wait a few weeks until things are really starting to happen. And then they make a suggestion that maybe the parent can book in for one or two consultations for themselves. Because you are right, when we look at the imprint period between 2 and 7, that is such a crucial time where as very young tiny adults or tiny children, we make assumptions and we make decisions and we take in emotions and we take in everything, and then we formulate, that 2 to 7 is when we formulate probably a lot of beliefs that actually drive us right well into our adulthood. And so when you have a lot of children, a lot of adults who know that they're not quite right, maybe they're suffering from some depression or mental illness or a host of what's out there, a lot of times their decisions can be traced back to they had formulated when they were very, very young. And Kim, I say sleep talk. If we could do sleep talk on every single child in the world, boy, would the world be a different place.
It's the way I feel about sensory enrichment. One of the first things that we do, everybody, wherever they come from, whatever their background, whatever their diagnosis, we'll go through a phase in our program where we talk about brain chemistry regulation, and it's meaningless to most people. But maybe we need to change what we mean by that. What we mean by that is you will start to feel calm, you will start to feel good, you will start to feel secure because your brain chemistry will tell you so, right? Serotonin is the chemistry of feeling in control and calm. Dopamine is the chemistry of enjoying life. They do so many other things, digestion and immune system response and movement control, but it's the feelings, and we want to bring that to the kids first because so many things unlock when they start to feel life is not so bad after that. And I feel this is why, in my introduction to the podcast, our goal, well, I don't say it in my podcast, but my vision statement is peace to the world. Basically, peace, literally serotonin, and this is, I think, this is why your program resonates very strongly. And I've had so much fun with this episode. I'm looking at the clock and we got to stop. I feel like there's one more thing I want to ask you, but when we go offline, there's some questions I want to ask you. So to end on a high, if we haven't peaked yet, because we've talked about peace to the world and love. I don't know what else we can say that could be more important and more positive than this.
Absolutely.
I think maybe we talk about something practical. You said you have a positive poster for parents. Can you talk a little bit about what it does? They'll know where to find it because it'll be in the show notes and in the email.
I have this little positive
we'll see the poster. What is it? What does it do? And maybe one thing out of the poster that, they need to start thinking about.
Great. The positive poster come about because I go right back here to my swimming instruction days, Kim, where I sat down with a bunch of swimming coaches and I sat down with a bunch of swimming teachers and then said, okay, we have 3 minutes. Let's write down every single positive phrase you say during the course of a session. And it's quite comical now to talk about it. The swim teachers nailed it. They got 15, 20 of these beautiful positive statements. The swim coaches, if they were lucky, got 2. And when you look at swim coaches, yes, they drive the children, they're motivating the children.
Hang on a second, your dad was a swim coach?
My dad was a swim coach. So, and the 2 that they use went over and over and over. They use the same thing over and over and over in a 45-minute hour session. They might say something 20 times, but there was 2. And so then I thought, well, what are parents like? How do parents praise their children? And I did a little and found, again, parents that were very open and loving, they were very good with their praises and had a lot of variety. The parents that were probably stuck in a little bit of a negative, I'd say the red parents, were very much like the swim coaches. They just were unable to think, when the things are they're stressful, they were unable to think of nice things to say to their children. And so this was born. I actually put this together for my swimming parents. And it was like, put it on the fridge. And if you see your son or your daughter doing something that you want to praise, instead of just utilizing the same phrase or the same amount of words, quickly give yourself a quick look and then basically say something different. And my parents absolutely loved it. It became one of the most important parts of my swim school. And of course, I've transferred it straight over to my parents in creative functional families. That, again, it really, every time a parent looks at it on the fridge, they are reminded that there are so many things you need to tell your child when the time is right and when you feel comfortable and when you're open. And I'll give you a perfect example. I do this all the time with my son, who's still now 23. He's a man. But I'll say to you, I love having you in my life. Now, my son is in London at the moment. I'm here in Australia, and he rings me every second or third day just to touch base. And I can't help it, but I say, look, I love it when you call. You make my day. And we have this brilliant, even though he's the other part of the world, we just have a beautiful connection that sadly I don't have with my other children. And I believe a lot of it was because they never got the sleep talk he did. But Mother's Day, I often send cards to my kids on Mother's Day saying thank you for giving me the privilege of being your parent. So, yes, I am a bit quirky, but it's all about making those kids feel special. And we should never stop, even when they become older adults. So I hope
Thank you
that
so much.
question.
Thank you so much, Kerre. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I will encourage everybody to have a look at that poster. Encourage everybody to look at the Sleep Talk program. It sounds like an amazing way to. It's kind of like a forced. It's perfect. I need to say what I'm trying to say is you've created a program, the way I see it, you've created a program that makes parents do what they should be doing, but give them sort of a structure and a framework that looks like not homework, but that looks like an assignment, and it makes it easy for them to do what it is to learn to do what they should be doing, and it makes them do it in a way that doesn't like they're hidden. It's at night, right? Nobody else hears them. There's nobody to watch. And it's just them and their kid, and there's no way for the kid to sort of give them any negative feedback from it, and it's just going in and going in, but they're taking it in, and the kid is changing. And I think that the format of it is almost it's beautiful when I look at it from my angle, from my fresh pair of eyes, my fresh eyes perspective.
No, well, Kim, and it dovetails with absolutely everything. So, whether
Yeah.
the child's having speech therapy or, as you said, children are having play therapy or other things to assist them, it just sits right in there. It dovetails lovely. Works very well. So I look forward to chatting with any parents who want to find out more about it. Please, by all means, contact me. And thank you, Kim, for allowing me to share it.
Thank you for reaching out, Kerre. I'm so glad that we met. And everybody listening, have a blessed week.
Bye.